Alright, what's up everyone? My name's Jaxler, and I'm going to be doing a run of Spongebob's Truth and Square for y'all today, so nice, cozy, fun little run. This game's a 3D platformer that was made by the same people that made Battle for Bikini Bottom, if you've ever heard of that game. But this is in a completely different direction, sorry, not different direction, different engine. So if you're familiar with that run or the SpongeBob movie run, this is actually going to be a bit different. I'm going to be showing off the any % no LSG category today. I'll get a bit into what that category name means when we get like a bit further into the run, but all you need to know for now is this is essentially an all levels run with some extra restrictions. Alright, so time is going to start here when I select a new game, so I'm pretty much ready to go here. So we'll start counting on 3, and we'll start time on go. 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so this game was created by Heavy Iron Studios in 2009. Like I said, the same people who made Battle for Bikini Bottom. It was originally released on Wii and Xbox 360. But for this run, we're going to be playing on the Xbox 360 version of the game. The 360 version generally has faster loads than the Wii version. It's about a minute and a half in this category. Although the shorter the category, the less it matters. But there's some other version differences that we can cover later on into the run, but for now, at the start of this first level here, you're going to see me deal with some robots. Now these robots can actually wander around a little bit during the intro cutscene to this level. So what I'm going to do is start with this guy up top here, and this will hopefully cause these two to line up next to each other just like that. And so when you're dealing with enemies in this game, you want to try to hit them with the same attack so that you don't have to do repeat swings. So if I hit like 2 enemies and share like a swing between them, I save a second each time I make that happen. So when I got that double there, it saved me 2 seconds over like a normal casual player's fight there. So like I said, the enemies wander a bit randomly before you have the chance to lure them over. But once we get into this next section here, you're going to see them pretty much line up right where I want to without much need for adjustment. And it looks like guy's in the back. Okay, so that guy wandered a little bit too far back, so I'm going to have to go for single hits on this guy. Not a huge deal, though. It's only a couple of seconds. Now, once I clean up the 4th guy, I'm going to take a little bit of a shortcut off of this boardwalk to reach up the cliff, and we'll go take care of the last one right here. Now, as we go into this cutscene, you're going to see me try to set up for a skip here called Tiki Jump. You're supposed to hit this button that we unlock. We could do the skip right away, but the next button that we need to hit here doesn't actually activate until we fight all the enemies. So there's a little bit of that cliff right there that extends past the fence that we can actually use to hop right over and skip hitting the button. I think it's like a 10-second time save or something like that. Small, but we'll take it. So as we're coming up here into this next section, you're going to see me do a quick little animation, cancel off the wall to save a couple of frames. And then as we get through this next segment, we're going to be coming up on our first really major trick, which are the barrel jumps. So I don't think we haven't come by any yet, but there are these barrel props in the game that are mostly used as decorations. But they actually have physics and can be kind of rolled. Well, you see some up there. They can actually be pushed and rolled around and used as platforms. So what I'm going to try to do is take some barrels in the next couple of areas and use them as platforms to skip up some ledges that I'm not supposed to be able to quite yet. So there's this big room right over here, but I'm going to grab this barrel off to this right side over here, get it on its side to get it rolling, and then if I get it on the wooden plank, I can put it in just the right spot. So there's the plank, put it right here, jump off, and we're good to go. That was pretty sick. Okay. Now, moving on here into this cave area, we're going to be doing a similar type of strategy. But for this one, instead of having the barrel on its side, at the end of the motion, I need to make sure that the barrel is above parallel, or to the floor. So that way it gives me enough height when I jump to actually clear the ledge that I need to here. If it's directly flat on the ground, it won't actually give you the height that you need. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll it up against the wall, and then catch it with Spongebob's body as it's rolling up, which allows it to stop right in place at an angle on the wall, which allows me to boost right up the ledge. So overall, pretty good start to this first level here. As we make our way towards the ending fight, I'm going to skip this portion of the slide. Normally, you're not allowed to jump off of these jelly slides here, but if you take the railing, you're not actually in the sliding animation, so you can use that to save about 5 to 7 seconds in movement. So this fight right here is actually rather complex under the hood, but what you the basics of how this fight works is that the game will prioritize spawning 3 blue spinner robots. and then in order to reach the maximum arena count of 5, it will then spawn in the green hammer robots as necessary. So as a result, you're going to see me prioritize hitting the blue robots in a specific order. So I'm going to hit 20, so then you should see 2 green hammer robots right here. This will actually, by doing that kind of manipulation, that will trick the spinner robots into spawning a little bit earlier, which saves a couple of seconds. I also got a really difficult cycle there, where I managed to do that all on one single Patrick Hammer power-up, which is really, really good. Okay, so now we're done with the first level here. Something you've probably noticed by now is that the loading screens have trivia. I encourage you all in the stream to play along if you want. But I am going to be skipping the answers a little bit early because it saves about 5 seconds per load. So unfortunately, you might not have as much time as you'd like to answer these extremely tricky SpongeBob trivia questions. This game is kind of like an anniversary thing, so that's why the questions exist. I already know most of these. Because not even because I'm the most familiar in the world with the show. I've just seen them so much after running this game so much. Alright, Karate Island. Alright, sorry, not Karate Island. Same music, which is why I get confused. Kelp Forest. We're going to start off with a out-of-bounds clip here in this first bit. I'm going to be looking for manipulation here to get these hammer robots into a specific spot on this wall. And if I do this right, they should clip me through the wall when they attack. Good. Okay, so you see the camera flip there. That means that I successfully clipped through the wall, then a little bit of tricky platforming. I have to be very careful not to fall here, but we should be in the clear now. So what happened there was called a hammer clip. Essentially, hammer robots have 2 different parts of their hitbox when they're attacking. There's like the part of the hitbox that's kind of, you know, like the enemy is solid and so SpongeBob can't like move through it. It's like a blocking hitbox. And then there's another part of the hitbox that actually deals damage. And if you get SpongeBob wedged into an acute angle, both of those hitboxes can kind of nudge you at the same time, and that can be enough to put you through acute angles. So I used that to get out of bounds, and then hit a respawn trigger inside the level, which allows me to skip roughly a minute of platforming in combat. Now, I grabbed this power-up here. I'll explain what this is for in a little bit. You're going to see me... okay. I'm going to have to go back and grab that power-up because it's going to be important for later. So I'm going to have to, unfortunately, take the Walk of Shame and let this respawn here. But you're going to see me go for a speed tech here called spin boosting. So what I'm going to do is I'm trying to lure the spin bot over and then jump and spin into the robot pretty much right before I got hit. So that's why you saw me lose the power-up there. It's because I got hit. And so when that happens, the game kind of expects you to be in a grounded state. So it doesn't immediately cap your vertical momentum. So as a result, that jump boosts you upward with extra speed. And that's going to be incredibly useful for skipping some platforming segments coming up here. Now, something I haven't really mentioned is this power-up that we've got called Sponge Buff, or I'll just be calling it the Buff power-up. This thing lets us do double damage to all enemies, and greatly increases the amount of distance that we travel mid-air when we're using this spin slap that we just unlocked. The way that they programmed it in this game, though, is that it's not like you're in the air for longer, it's that it moves you faster through the air. So what I can do is this movement tech called spin hopping, where I do very short hops close to the ground, and then spin, so that I land immediately and get to do another spin. And if I keep chaining those, it will let me move a bit faster than my normal walking speed. Now right here, you're going to see me do a spin boost. Oh, okay, saved it. So normally, you have to hit a bunch of buttons in sort of this puzzle platforming bit, but if you spin boost off the robot, you can actually reach the switch that gets lowered down earlier than intended, and that skips the whole section. That's like a 30-second cut right there. Very, very useful strat. Another animation cancel off the fence there, and then as I approach this hallway here, I'm going to go for kind of a swag strat that only saves like a second, called fence jump, or gate jump. Got it, nice, swag. That one's more of a mental damage if you miss it rather than like a time loss. So right here, what's happening, these sort of sea flowers, they're supposed to be like Venus flytrap type things that suck you in and deal damage to you and steal your power up, and it's generally not a great time. But the devs accidentally made their hitboxes too small, so you can actually cruise right by there without getting damaged or having to grab a power up to power through. Now, because I have the power-up here, which is normally not intended, I'm going to be able to actually do a two-side hole in this boss fight right here. So I'm luring the robot into the wall in order to cause the attacking to end as soon as possible. And then by damaging it with the buff power-up, I actually do double the damage. So 2 bars of health gone, and then we just need to hit it one more time and we're good to go here. Again, I have to be a little bit careful here because if I take a hit with the buff power-up on, I lose it. And sometimes in the run, that'll mean I won't have a chance to back it up and re-grab it, which can kind of pose some problems. So as a result, it's really critical that I try not to take damage whenever I have this buff power-up on. You also see me actually got a kind of nifty strat there where I sat in the correct position during that cutscene so that the treasure chest boosted me up into the object. If you get the perfect positioning, you actually grab the object during the cutscene and it saves even more time. But that's going to be the end of Kelp Forest here. That was overall a pretty good segment, I'd have to say. Excuse me, hairball. Okay, quick sip of water. Okay, so going in at the end of like each set of levels, there's like a boss stage where we fight different like robot versions of Spongebob characters. This one's going to be against Robo. It's a relatively straightforward fight. Again, the concept still applies where I need to make sure I'm holding on to my buff power-up because the buff power-up is what's going to be enabling me to deal a lot of damage on the enemies here, as well as do the spin-hopping movement to increase my speed. For this first bit of the fight, we're going to be waiting out the attacks here so that we can make the boss vulnerable. But in between phases of attacking, the boss will send out some enemies, and that's where the spin-hopping movement will be really important to optimize. So catch him right there. Then wait just a tad, so that it gives me kind of an extra phantom hit, and it saves about a half a second there. Now, the robots in each phase spawn in the same positions every time. So what I do is I line myself up, and then I nail him right out of the midair there in order to kill him instantly. But yeah, from here on out, the rest of the fight is rather straightforward. I don't have too much to sort of elaborate on otherwise, so this would be a really good break to, if we got any plugs or messages to read or anything like that, Lori.
Well, we do not have any donations, but I would like to point out that if you want to get your donations in, we are, oh, actually, never mind. I was about to say we're $5 away from the cross-use incentive, but we just got $5 from Spectral & Co. that says, let's finish off this incentive. And with that, we have met the incentive for the next run. Jamich will be showing off some difficult songs during Cross Beats Rev Sunrise.
Sick. Thank you everyone so much for your donations. Alright, so as we're coming towards the end of the fight here, we're going to be getting another one of those happiness objects that you've been seeing me get at the conclusion of each level. So I'm going to kind of take this time to explain like what the no level skip glitch category actually means. Because already we've been seeing like majority of like actual level, which is not something you'd see in a normal any percent run. Reason being, in order to save on processing, these end-level happiness objects can actually sometimes be located out of the boundaries of individual levels and maps. And so what you can actually do is, if you grab these objects from out of bounds, they're still technically active. So they act as like end-level triggers from out of bounds, and you can use this to queue the ends of levels faster than what's normally intended, and pretty much skip like massive, I'd say minutes. And in terms of an any percent speedrun, it's even more devastating for time save. Devastating in a good way, because if you repeat the glitch on certain triggers, it advances the value in memory that keeps track of story progress. So as a result, if you repeat the glitch, you can trick the game into thinking you've beaten levels that you haven't already even visited. And as a result, it lets you skip like the entire back half of the game once you get it rolling. So the no level skip glitch category kind of shows off all the game's levels with that restriction, so that we don't really trivialize. Well, we're going to trivialize some parts of the levels, but we're not going to be skipping like majorities of levels outright for the most part. You're going to get to see a lot more of the game this way. That would pretty much be trivialized in an any percent run. The any percent run is still really rad, but with a no level skip glitch run, you really get to see a lot more cool strats here. Like this level, for example, you would completely skip with the level skip glitch, but in this category you get to see it in its entirety. That's really unlucky. So these spinner enemies can reflect your shots, and so in order to do this puzzle I have to use my cannon shot ability in order to create a way forward. Unfortunately I got super unlucky there, so I'm going to be here about a half cycle late. Oh my gosh, I suck. Make that a full cycle late. There we go. That happens very rarely. It's not a huge deal, you know, it's a marathon, all things considered. Now, as I make my way to the bus wash here, I'm actually going to wait for the bus to stop before I press the button. For whatever reason, it's a really random thing. If you hit the button early, the bus will just pause there for 3 seconds, and it's just random time loss. I don't know why it's a thing. You get punished for going fast, so I choose to go slightly slower to go slightly faster. Alright, I actually need to be kind of careful not to die here, because that would be a little bit embarrassing to die on the auto-scroller. But as we go into the next half of this level, is kind of a gauntlet of 3 pretty tough tricks back to back. I'm going to start by jumping over to this pier a little bit early, and then jumping around the right side to skip a cutscene, which saves about 5 seconds. Now, there's normally a bunch of button-hitting puzzles I'm supposed to do, but I can jump off of these propellers after reaching them by jumping on a piece of coral geometry, and that lets me jump over the invisible wall to skip the entire segment. That skip is a lot harder than I made it look, because the hitbox that you have to jump on for those propellers is tiny. It's about the size. You'll see me do some more propeller jumps in a moment, and I'll point out how small the hitbox is. But coming up right here is Tub Skip. What I'm going to be doing here is, the geometry right here isn't, like, actually geometry. I was low health, so I took the death. I'll go for the trick again. Essentially, that rock is treated more as an invisible wall than it is like an actual object. So they never bothered to put like geometry on the other side of it, so you can use it to jump up here and skip a tub puzzle, for lack of a better term. Now up here, you're going to see me do this part of the puzzle intentionally to keep these propellers locked downward. And you'll kind of see here, like, these propellers that I have to stand on are really small. It's pretty much just the circular bit in the center. And then I use that to reach a lamppost, which lets me clear that invisible wall right there. And that's kind of the gauntlet of the 3 tricks right there. Those combined save about 2 minutes. Well, okay, the tub skip only saves about 7 seconds. But I included in there because that's another really tricky movement strat that you kind of have to do, especially when you start to optimize this category. Now, we busted out Squidward there. That's pretty much the only time you'll see him until we get to the second to last platforming level. He's really overpowered. You'll get to see a little bit more about why he's so crazy busted later. But you're going to see me try to jump as quickly out of this quicksand as possible because it slows you down, and pretty straightforward, I guess. And then right here, you're going to see me do what's called a paddle boost. Now, all like paddle levers in this game spin clockwise. So if you land on them and then spin, like if you sort of brush up against them and spin, it will actually boost you along with the way that it's moving, which allows you to gain a little bit of extra speed. Now, in this last puzzle that we have to do here, I actually did kind of a cool strat to make up for some of my mistakes here. I'm actually ricocheting it off the wrong side in order to avoid having to wait for the proper rotation cycle, which saves a couple seconds every time you get it. So, I got 1.5 there, so that's not too bad. And that's the end of Fry Cook. Gotta be very careful there not to actually land in that treasure chest there, because that treasure chest is notorious for clipping you inside the bus in a way that you can't escape. And yeah, if you get stuck there, you're screwed. You have to restart the whole level. So I play that very safe, just to be sure. But now we're coming up into probably one of my favorite levels in this category. This is Santa. Now, this is, in most categories, this is a level that's pretty much bypassed, because you can pretty immediately go out of bounds to grab the happiness objects, but because of the category restriction, I'm going to be using the same out of bounds in a different way to meet the category fulfillment. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by cannon shotting this robot, because once we're out of bounds, he can actually shoot us through the wall, which is not very cash money. I'm going to jump on these pillars right here, and this wall is not solid, so I can kind of just cruise right by it. And now there's a little bit of the floor that extends past the invisible wall here. There's just a little bit of extra geometry. So I'm using that to get to these crates, which have geometry that sticks out of bounds. and then I can double jump spin to get on the starting platform of the level. This sort of container right here sticks part of the way out of the invisible wall, and I can take a blind jump through these ice cubes here to get to a much later part of the level, but I still kind of have the issue of being a little stuck out of bounds here. So what you're going to see me do here is a bit of a scary jump. Good, I got it. The bit of geometry on the outside of these tunnels is rather thin, so I have to be a bit careful there. But by doing that sequence, I activate the checkpoint trigger just inside that tunnel, which lets me bypass most of the level, even with the no-level skip glitch requirement mandated by this category. So that's one of my favorite sequences in the whole run. That can be a little bit scary and especially tricky if you're starting out with this category, but one of my favorite glitches in the whole run. Or, not really glitch, one of my, well, yeah. Anyway, speaking of favorite glitches, we got a really cool strat coming up called Tendy Skip. Because the boss is named the Tenderizer, so we had to take the meme opportunity. If I do this right, you're going to see something rather interesting happening. So, 1 attack, 2 attack, then I'm going to attack him once, and then I'm going to double jump at a certain time. That looks good. Boss instantly dies. So what we believe happens there, just based on kind of guesswork and previous games that Heavy Iron made with the Spongebob license, is that we believe that there is a trigger in the ceiling of that room that was left as a part of testing or debugging, where it just instantly kills the boss. When we believe that's the case because there's a couple of triggers like that in SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom, such as for the Flying Dutchman boss. And so we believe that's a similar case. That was discovered completely by accident by Cube, so big shout-outs to Cube for finding that one. I love Tendy Skip. It's just such a random, cool little strat. But Murmur is another really flashy level. This is normally a level you'd beat in 8 seconds at any percent because the end level trigger is super close out of bounds. But we're going to do something a bit different. I'm going to jump on this rock pillar and then double jump spin to get on top of an invisible wall. Invisible walls have a very small amount of geometry that you can actually stand on, so I use it to do a bunch of mountain climbing out of bounds. And now we're on the ceiling of the second to last room in the level. So what I'm going to do is I need to get back in bounds. So I'm going to fall with a neutral angle on the stick so that I can clip back in bounds, and then I can double jump on these pipes to get to the final combat section here. Pretty much skipping I'd say, it used to be like a 6-minute level. It's been a while. But that skip is actually shared between a couple of categories. But like I said, if you're playing any percent, you can actually skip that pretty easily. So I got some combat going on here. So this is where you really get to start to see the cannon shots start to shine. You didn't really see me use it all that much when I unlocked it in, excuse me, what's the level called? I'm blanking. I swear I run this game. 4th level, Try-Cook, that's it. But it has a really high rate of fire and low startup frames, so it's really powerful in this fight specifically because we skip the buff power-up that we normally get. Wow, that was a gold. Okay, sick. Wow, that was a really great Murmur. Okay, not too bad for being a little rusty, I suppose. But we're going to be moving on into another boss fight now. With the Robo Squidward boss fight. This was actually a boss idea that they had planned for Battle for Bikini Bottom, which never made it into the final game. There's actually concept art of it up online, but they actually implemented it for this game. And unfortunately, it's a bit random for speedrunning purposes. It's not like a super crazy big deal, but, you know, me being a bit of a snob with my own personal bars that I set for myself, I can be a little obnoxious to deal with sometimes. Essentially, what I'm going to be doing is trying to take as tight a turn to the other side as quickly as possible. There's a lot of enemies that can heck me during this fight, as well as some other random nonsense garbage that will happen with some random animation, taunting animations that the boss can go into, each of which loses you a couple of seconds if you get unlucky enough. So I'm going to take a bit of a wide angle here, wait until this drops down because I'm trying to have that spinner robot not attack me as I land here. Good, I got the correct manipulation. If the spinner robot hits you as you're returning, the point doesn't count for some reason, and it just doesn't deal any damage. I don't know why that's the case, but it's really obnoxious, so I avoid getting that robot to be in range to attack me for as long as possible, so that I have a big enough window to be able to handle what's going on. Okay, so there's a small chance that right there, Robo Squidward could have done the cackle animation and lost me some seconds here. This is looking pretty good so far. Hairball, excuse me. But going into the third phase is going to be pretty much the same thing, but instead, in order to avoid the platforming, I'm actually going to ride the platform all the way to the other side, and that just lets me not have to worry about all of it. Really, really nice strat, and I highly recommend doing it if you ever play this game casually. Now, I'm going to wait until he stops spinning. That's the cackle animation I was talking about. I could hit these switches early, but if I do, it causes Robo Squid to slow his spin attack down for whatever reason. We don't really understand why. But you avoid that happening by just chilling out and standing in place there. And that's going to be the end of the Robo Squid fight. So grab the happiness object and we're good to go here. So yeah, while we're kind of loading into the next part of the run, Lori, if we got anything that we want read off, now would be a great opportunity.
No new donations. However, we do have a pretty interesting incentive. So I mentioned before this run that the Midwest Speed Fest community partners with the VGM Con, and for tonight's VGM Con online charity stream, if we raise $50, we can get Vaughn, who is part of, I believe, the VGM Con team, to wear armor, crown, and cape, donning a full medieval outfit. And I do not know what's happening there, but all I know is that sounds great.
I agree, that does sound great. So, this is a really interesting level here. This is probably the least broken level in this category in terms of skips and such. This is mostly going to be movement and little skips along the way. Normally, you could skip a lot of this level with a level skip glitch. But without the level skip glitch, you actually have to play the majority of the level here. So you're going to see some really rad strats here that you wouldn't see in any other category of this game's speedrun. So right there, that pull is a bit slick. And again, you can't jump while you're on the sliding goo. So I do some clever platforming there. I hit the cutscene again, dang it. Okay, so I'm going to have to try this section again. I'm trying to jump around a cutscene trigger there. So I have to be a little bit careful there. That jump is really obnoxious on a bad day. So, okay. So, unfortunately I fell onto the slime. Okay, I got knocked off. Take 3! Let's see if I can get this. I'll shut up for once so I can actually, focus on this. That should work. There we go. So that cutscene trigger can be a bit wide, so I have to take a bit of a careful path there. So I'm gonna wait for the rising tide of the stomach acid there to give me a little bit of extra height, and then I can skip an entire bomb detonation puzzle. It's important that you do that rail jump too, because you skip spawning in the enemies that normally ruin your life there. But this level is going to be a really tricky test of buff conservation. We haven't seen buff in the past couple of levels, except for the boss, just because we've skipped so much of those Act 2 levels. But in this stage here, we're going to be getting a buff, and after a certain point, I'm not going to have access to buff for the rest of the level. So I'm going to be doing my darndest to try to hold on to this buff for as long as I possibly can, and ideally till the end of the level. Because if I can hold the buff power up into the ambush fight at the end of the level, it'll save me a ton of time. So there's normally a puzzle here where you have to change the stomach acid levels, similar to the puzzles of the Ocarina of Time Water Temple, in order to move a platform. But you don't have to do that. There's a ledge that you can jump off of. So as I made my way through that section right there, I actually jumped at specific times. Those small little enemies that kind of pop out of the ground shoot cannonballs at you, and they are extremely dangerous. And so you're going to be seeing me do some enemy manipulation in the way that I go about placing my spin hops in order to get them to spawn where I want to, so they're not a threat. This will become a bit more important when I get a bit further into the level. Try to squeeze out. Okay, got a little. Alright, so I'm going to wait for this water geyser here, and then jump to cancel out of the gumball. And now this is the point of no return. If I lose my buff power from here on out, I cannot get another one, and I will just have to improvise. So, I have strats in either case, but you know, we want to try to do the fast, I suppose. So, yeah, here's the point of no return. So we start off, this first wave of enemies here always spawn in the same position, and then if you kill them at the same speed, the next waves will spawn in the same position as well. So I'm going to wait here, start a spin, and then carry it into that enemy, and that's going to set up for where I want the enemies to be placed in this third cycle of 4. Oh, you wandered away, you jerk. And there we go. Alright, so coming up here is one of my favorite sections of movement. I call it the Boneyard because you're platforming on a bunch of pretty much dinosaur bones here. So I'm just going to kind of let this speak for itself and also take some time to focus here, because all this movement through here can be really scary, and there's a lot of obstacles that can take the buff power up here, so I'm going to try to focus. Won't you all enjoy? A lot of cool spin hops here. Good. Good, got through there quickly enough to avoid that cycle, and I should be able to avoid this next 5th cycle right here, so that's pretty good. Generally speaking, cycles in this game are local to a specific part of the level geometry. I'm going to go wide here just to be safe. And then jump over here. Oh, you jerk. Got him. Cool. So that's the hallway of hell. That one little enemy right there can be a giant nuisance, and it's very easy to lose your buff there. But I managed to get through it just fine, so I'm not really at risk anymore for losing buff, as long as I play my cards right here. It's supposed to be a bit of a puzzle platforming bit here, but spin boosting will just take me right over there and let me skip that entire section outright. Really straightforward one right there. Now right here, I'm going to be attempting to skip those 3 platforms that you see to jump onto the eel by jumping onto the railing. The railing's hitbox is smaller than you think, so I'm actually going to be quiet for a second. Got it. Okay, cool. I know it looks like I'm being like super turbo cautious there, but it's extremely important that I focus there because it is very easy to fall off right there. I have lost several runs to that happening before. Now, as we get into this next bit here, you're normally supposed to roll around some more bomb bots here, but I'm going to be doing a really cool skip that's pretty much only possible. It is possible to do without buff, but it's stupid, quite frankly, to do without the buff power-up, and it's this right here. So I actually double jump and spin underneath all that geometry to reach the propeller right there, and then have the propeller's rotation push me over here so I can hit this without having to reveal the necessary switches to be able to do that part. Spin boost right up here. And then I actually wait a little bit before I attack the bomb bot, because he's usually firing a shot as you're spin boosting up there. So you actually have to be a little bit careful with your movement there to avoid taking damage. And now because I actually managed to keep the buff power up through here, I'm going to be able to show off the fastest fight and movement through here. So I'm going to start by turning around, take a risky jump over here, and now we'll get to see our pal Squidward again. So I'm doing some very specific manipulation here. I get that guy to attack first, and I'm sort of hitting them all before they have the chance to retaliate, so that they, again, spinner robots can block cannonball shots. So what I'm trying to do is damage them before they can actually reflect the cannonball shots, so that way they don't pose any threat. Wow. Alright, pretty much perfect. And then quick couple of spin hops and we're good to go. Nice. Okay, that was a pretty good rock bottom. The reason it's called 24 Hours with the Krusty Krab, but the reason I call it Rock Bottom is because it's kind of level themed after Rock Bottom from Battle for Bikini Bottom. Because this game was made by the same developers who made Battle for Bikini Bottom and the SpongeBob movie game, they actually reused a lot of music and visual assets for this game in order to save on costs. So if some of the music sounds familiar, that would be why. Or some of the like levels and stuff look familiar, that would be why. Now, going into this last level, this, for the longest time, was the longest level in any category. But going into here, by everyone's kind of collective brute forcing and intuition and sheer will, we've managed to find a way to skip pretty much the entirety of the level. And I'm going to set up for that right here. So I need to kill these 2 enemies, and then you're going to see me do another kind of hammer clip, similar to what I did it in the second level. So I'm actually going to get both of these hammer robots here together, right next to each other so that they line up and make it more likely that I get pushed inside this wall right here. Perfect, okay. So then I jump in kind of to this rock right here. Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to restart it. I screwed up the jump. That's okay. That's not a huge deal. That actually doesn't lose too much time. Getting the clip actually isn't the hard part. The hard part is getting the jump up the hallway. But it looks like the robots are gonna cooperate a little bit more here, so I shouldn't have too many troubles getting the clip. Yeah, perfect, first try. Alright, let's see if I get this. Good. So there's a very small bit of geometry that you can scale up right there. And a lot of these levels are built in a fashion where the level ends up kind of wrapping around itself. I'm gonna grab this checkpoint just to be safe. The level ends up wrapping around on itself because, like, from a game development standpoint, as, like, your stuff starts to stray away from, like, x and y equals 0, weird things can happen, especially with floating point decimals. So they built a lot of the geometry around that to kind of bring it back towards the center of the level eventually. And so that's why you see things happen like they did in Santa and in Murmur. Bruh, are you gonna do this to me in a... Okay, cool. So sometimes the boss here can get stuck on particle effects, especially when the crates break. Sometimes he like gets stuck for a really long time and he just glides across the arena for like a full 45 seconds. So that's really unfortunate if it happens. Luckily he wasn't the most rude I've ever seen him be, so I've seen worse, you know. But yeah, by doing that strat, we pretty much skip the whole level. This level in like a speedrunning sense before this was found, normally like 10 minutes long. But now it's only like a 4.5 minute level, like 4 3/4 minute level. It's pretty wild, like how much this skip has like shaved down the record over the past couple of years. But this fight is rather straightforward. But I'll kind of go into what I'm doing sort of to manipulate the boss fight here because it's not just kind of waiting around on it's not completely an auto-scroller. So the boss will always do 2 of these spinning charge attacks before it will go to the middle of a certain spot in the arena and become vulnerable. So what I'm doing is I'm moving Spongebob in a specific way such that when the boss finishes its second attack, it'll be in the middle of that back wall that you see right there. So that way I minimize its travel distance to its vulnerable phase. And so I'm trying to do that as much as possible for each phase. Unfortunately, the first phase was really bad because he decided to do the Glide of Doom, as I like to call it. But these other minutes have been looking pretty good so far, so not too much for me to comment on. Pretty much we just finish up this boss, and that's pretty much the end of this level until we go to the final boss. So I don't have too much to continue talking about right now, so Lori, if you've got anything you'd like to mention, now would be a great time.
Yes, so on top of some of our recent incentives that have opened or still need to be met, such as the Beat Mania incentive is happening after Crossbeats after this run, so it's getting pretty close, and it's only at $30 out of 100 for that game's difficult song showcase. Get your money in there. We also have some bid wars. We have the Super Monkey Ball 2 file name coming up in a couple hours. Right now, CIV is in the lead with $25, and Bergie has $12. So if you want to change that, make sure to get your money in.
Please
and
don't
for Hilux,
for Bergie, sorry.
and for Hilux 2, the outfit bid war between the black jumpsuit and the indigo jumpsuit with the scarf. There's no money in for that yet, so if you want to get money in for that, you will be deciding the leader.
Please consider voting for Bergie. I'm a big Bergie fan, and I would appreciate some Bergie representation in the Super Monkey Ball. I'm biased. But donate towards whatever you want to. Suppose that's my runner's choice. I appreciate all the Bergies. Alright, so we're coming up on the final stage of the game, which is going to be this Robo-Plankton boss fight. Thank you all for being a part of this and for letting me show this game off. This has been a really fun showcase, and I hope you all have enjoyed this run up until this point. But as we're moving on towards the end, this boss fight is going to be broken up into two sort of major segments. There's going to be these Rooftop Run Phases, which are kind of... might be familiar if you've played Creature from the Krusty Krab, the sections with Patrick towards the end of the game. Very similar kind of concept where we're kind of waiting around for the boss, and then we have to kill some enemies quickly in between. But then once we go inside the boss to deal damage itself, you're going to see some very movement-heavy stuff. So... he makes a great sound there. Good old Spongebob. But going into this first bit here, it's mostly just going to be focusing on optimizing the robot fights here. So what I'm going to be doing is lining myself up in a specific spot where a robot will spawn on top of me, and then I'll time my first swing, and then hopefully by the time the next robot spawns, it'll set up for a double. So 1, 3. I tried to do a cannon shot to save a couple extra frames, but it ended up being my downfall. Underfortunate. There we go. And so there's not really too much that we can do to speed this up. We have to get Robo-Plankton over here, and we have to wait for him to get over here. There's not really too much we can do to speed this bit up. But once we get inside, we're going to be grabbing a buff power-up, and just like in previous levels, preserving my buff across the multiple phases here is going to be incredibly critical. There's going to be an extra buff power-up per phase. Hello? Thank you. There's going to be an extra buff power-up per phase of the fight. However, I really want to avoid picking up those if I can, because they're a bit out of the way, and I can do some faster cycles inside of the actual boss here. So we're going to be starting off by... the buff power-ups are always in the same spot, so I got that one right there and start working on these generators. They made 3 hits with the held down spin. And then I'm trying to kill these hammer robots, because the robots can actually damage you during that cutscene. They won't, like, take from your health bar, but they can remove your buff power-up during the cutscene. And those hammer robots have a really long range of attack. So I try to eliminate those as early as possible before I start going ham on my heart. It's also important to note that, like, because I have the buff power-up here, there's a bunch of really chunky enemies in these next couple of rooftop phases. So it's really, really crucial to have it here. So, like, these guys have tons of health, and they're just going to, like, die instantly to the power of the buff. And then we just kind of rotate in place here while we wait for the next phase. I have to be a bit careful here, though. I actually wait because that sort of steam vent is active. Even though, like, the texture for the steam hasn't appeared on screen yet, it's still going constantly. It just hasn't visually loaded in yet. So I actually have to be a bit careful there. To make sure that I don't lose buff power. If I lost it there, it wouldn't have been like the end of the world, because there's a 1 backup buff power up per core phase here. Good. And so because I cut the buff power up here, I'm going to be able to take the faster route in this second phase here. So instead of going up into to the left, I believe, for the buff power up, I get to immediately turn around and break that. And then I can go take care of these two. And then I can clink off of that spinner to cancel my spin attack early, so I can go back into the spin hopping motion a bit faster. Good. It's also important to note that the robots actually can deal damage to the boss here. I don't know why that's programmed like that, but it can be very useful. If you can get a spinner robot next to the heart, you can actually throw in some extra damage, especially if you accidentally whiff a hit, which is not all that uncommon. But here, from now on, I really don't have to worry about the buff management anymore. We're pretty much at the point where I'm pretty much set to go. So there's a backup one right there. And interestingly enough, there's actually going to be a trigger going into the final stage of the fight. where the game is going to forcibly remove my buff. There's actually a similar one in the Karate Island mini-boss fight, which I didn't really have time to explain because I kept getting hacked in that level. But essentially, you're going to see me get my power forcibly removed from me for reasons we don't know why. It's actually not there on the Wii version, which actually makes the Wii version optimal for running the IL of this boss fight, which is very, very silly. But hey, in the name of fast, I suppose. Anywho, we're going to lose the buff power-up as we go into the next phase. I'm going to have to grab the close backup on the far right. But that's fine because it's actually right next to the generator I need to go for, so no big deal here. Yeah, see what I mean? Oh, heck. There we go. I wouldn't even need to worry about that happening anyway, but unfortunately I had to hit that an extra cycle. But time will be coming up soon. I'm going to be doing damage to the core one last time, and when it does one big last explosion upon final hit, that's when we call time. So we got a couple more generators to go, and a little bit more of spin hopping movement to close out the run here. So I'll let you all know when time is coming up. Get ready? Time. Whew! Alrighty, that was Spongebob's Truth or Square, any percent, no LSG. That was, by my count, just under a 45-minute run. That was a 44:52. Not bad. This game can be really tricky to play under pressure, so getting a sub 45 is really, really rad. Couple of quick shout-outs before I go. I want to shout out the Truth or Square community. There are a lot of... there's actually a pretty big scene for this game. There's a lot of people that run it, or are at least knowledgeable enough to help new runners out. So if you're interested in picking up this game, it's a very friendly, tight-knit community, and everyone is super welcoming. If you go to speedrun.com/SBTOS, we have a Discord for the Wii and 360 versions, as well as the PSP and DS versions, which are kind of different runs, but they have their own dedicated community as well, and we all kind of share a Discord together. So yeah, big shout-outs to the Truth or Square scene. Big shout-outs to Midwest Speed Fest for having me and for letting me show off this game and this run. This is one of my favorite speed games and my favorite category in that speed game. And to be able to show it off in the opening day of the event is an honor, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And also, I'm glad to be a part of this and appreciate everyone who's been donating for this excellent cause. I don't want to take too much more of your time, but if you want to catch more runs of this game, you can find me at twitch.tv/Jaxler1. And with that, I don't have much more to say, so I'm going to throw it back to Lori. And enjoy the rhythm block, everyone. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care.